Hey, what's going on, guys? Phil here, and we are back with some news. In particular, we're talking about Mechwarrior Online and map design. Piranha Games has recently hired a new level designer, Francois, and it looks like the Cauldron has sat down and talked with him. I was able to meet up with Navid during today's stream, and we talked for quite some time about maps in general, but also how he felt about the discussions with Piranha Games behind the scene when they sat down and talked with Francois. So I'm going to go ahead and break to basically the highlight from today's stream and get you guys caught up to date with, again, his interaction with Francois and Piranha Games as far as maps, and hopefully very soon as far as changes to maps, including this map, Canyon Network, and multiple others. Enjoy. Alright, guys, and we are back. Like I say again, welcome to everyone out there. Thanks for a quick bio break. Hey Navid, how are you?
Hey Phil. Sounds good. How's it going?
Good, man. So you guys sat down with the new level designer at PGI and you talked to them, talked to him. How'd that overall go? Like, how are you felt pretty good about it, the conversation?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it was pretty good. I mean, Francois is a pretty nice guy, and like we were kind of like pleasantly surprised because he basically knew a big part of the problems with like maps, like the first map we chose was Canyon, but he was kind of like in the loop. What's going on in that map? What's wrong in that map? Like from his perspective, like as a new player basically, but he's not new to first-person shooters, so it's kind of like yeah, this doesn't seem right. It has to have like these features.
Yeah, obviously it's a little bit different designing maps when you don't have like I was making that point of like when you talk about like Valorant or like Overwatch, you also have weapons that are one-shot weapons there, right? Like, and so, you know, like we don't necessarily have that, but so you guys, you sat down, you talked with them. You said the plan was to do a map a month or whatever to make adjustments to a map, you know, and
yeah. I mean, based on what they said was that they were gonna reach out to the community, like more like similar, like experienced and like new players, to kind of like know what the major issues are, like what we think are the major issues, because when you play a map like thousands of times, you know that, oh man, I wish I wasn't here, I wish there was something I could use here, those kind of like little tidbits, because you kind of don't when you hop into a new game, you wouldn't be able to like find those spots right away if you haven't played it. But yeah, I mean, they were saying that, okay, so each map they were able to change the topology of the map, put in obstacles or like structures, assets in the way, or kind of like create new cover areas, that sort of thing. And also, like, of course, changing spawns. I think they're changing like spawns on 3 maps for the upcoming patch. They're still like deciding on the position and how to do it. We've given them like 3 potential choices, but I don't know their decision, so I can't say anything.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so you made a statement earlier that, you know, again, I had to sort of like push back on, is like, I think NASCAR is, I think it's multiple things. I think map design doesn't help it. I think it sort of it's not, what is it called? It's it's not the map design isn't the cause, but it's like a, I'm trying to think of the word here.
Like, it's
a symptom. Like, yeah, it's a symptom. It definitely, you know, it just like, because player behavior, I think, is the number one thing. Like,
yeah, I mean, you kind of have player behavior is kind of like what causes it. However, there are like behavior is a result of like the current situation. It's like, let's say like you have a big structure like in the center of the map, like usually when the two teams meet.
Yeah.
And if it's a big like cover area, big structure in the middle, you kind of like by nature you want to go towards it, tuck yourself like right
Yeah.
besides it, and kind of
Yeah.
like
Rotate.
use the little
Yeah.
use the little corner. The rotation comes in as some sort of like defense mechanism, because the enemy is like nipping to my left, like flanking, so I need to move to stop getting shots.
And where you leave friendlies because, well, I'm faster and the assault, oh well, you know. Yeah, I mean, like I think NASCAR, when you look at it, like, I think people are right. It highlights any problems with the map. Like, if you have NASCAR that's really bad on a map, generally speaking, I think it's player behavior, but then that map is doing something different than, like, for instance, I made that comment, like Polar Highlands, you don't really have NASCAR, but you do when it comes to Domination in the middle, because guess what? It's on the highest point in the middle of the map. There's no cover on that outside to be able to maneuver and stuff like that. And case in point, so I'm looking at the first picture, and obviously I know exactly what we're talking about here. Ramp. I think one of the problems is, like, there's no way to get up easily and accessible, and I don't know how much of that is or was changed from mobility, because I know there's settings to allow mechs to be able to scale different angles. Like, that's why Commando can just run up you know, the sides of the hills, and it's not a problem. So it looks like there's bridge idea, a ramp here. Look, are these pillars being removed in the middle?
Yeah, those are kind of like flattened. Like there would still be something there. For example, for you to be able to have a Wolfhound like operating around that area, but certainly you can't kind of like have two lances there and like using those pieces as cover, because like if you have the two teams kind of a congregated on the both side of that thing, it will turn into a NASCAR. There's no way. One reason is that the center area between those those two big rocks, like the problem, like here's the problem. Here's why it turns into a NASCAR. The center area is a risk. No one would poke their head up to shoot at the enemy head on there, because it's a narrow area. Everyone knows where to look, and you can count on the enemy team looking that way, so you can't see the enemy like before you poke your head up, and when you see them, it's already too late, because 8 mechs are shooting at you and you're done. So no one's poking their head up that ramp unless they're either like inexperienced or don't know how this works. So they're kind of like, okay, I'm taking the right side flank, because if you look at this map, the right side flank on both sides, it's kind of like gives access to like flanks on both like your team and the enemy team, and it kind of like amplifies the NASCAR. So if both team wants to flank constantly.
Well, and also if you go a little bit wider, you're dropping down, and if you drop down, then you're going wider, and which means, like, and this is sort of the problem of assaults. Mediums and stuff and lights can get up here really quick, whereas an assault has to go all the way around, and
it's like lack of accessibility in this map is what is brutal. Like there are lots of places, for example, like here, like there's like actually some features in Hibernal map that help with this, like in a significant way. For example,
you know what's funny is that this is supposed to be sort of a symmetrical map, but it's actually not, because it's missing the bridge right here. It should actually have exactly what this has. Like this should, because this gives a ramp. The idea would be it gives access to this, and the same thing if you flip back. Yeah, it's not symmetrical.
Yeah, exactly. It's like exactly. Like you have the access point to one side, but not to the other. It's like, okay, so that makes that spine like really powerful. I mean, there are some other changes that kind of like wants to balance this. For example, this piece of cover in the middle, like when you play Canyon, like one of the main problems that the team on the south side has is that when assault mechs want to cross that open area, that open area from when they spawn, they're in open ground and the enemy team is already on top of them on the other side, and they get shot to shit.
I think adding cover, like, okay, cool, but that's spawn. Like, that's the only way you can fix that, because like cover, all that's gonna do is like light. Yeah, that's because they spawn over here and it's in like no man's land, and the only way, there's no ramps up to this thing to get out of there quickly. And again, accessibility, it's like wheelchair accessibility, right? I mean, it's the same thing. It's assault mech accessibility, or heavy, any mech without jump jets, really, if we're thinking about it. But okay, so the second one here, I see the cover. You know, I would argue, again, symmetrical wise, the same thing could be said about the other side too. But
I mean, the other side has its defensible positions like right above. It's like you don't cross that other side. Like usually you don't spawn there. That's one of the main problems on the spawn point. Is like one team doesn't get to cross in the open like that. The other one does, and kind of like that piece of cover is basically to make it like that. These.
Yeah, here's a ramp. So this is where right now assault spawn right here. They travel along this path, and they basically get hosed. If the spawns were different, it still doesn't change the fact of.
Yeah, the spawns would change as well.
You need these ramps. Also, too, with this, the thing I would stress to him, which is, they can't. You know the little ramp over here that you have to like wiggle up to get up. It's you know, like, you shouldn't have to wiggle your assault mech. It should just be a nice, it should be, you know, like, easily accessible.
That's one of the points we made. That's one of the points we made, is that there are places on this map that kind of like comp players know where they are, like how to scale those slopes, and on visually you cannot know that it's traversable, and it's kind of like it's a very like kind of like tight. You have to like left and right to go up there. Why is that? Just make it an obvious ramp, just because you're torturing new players, because like it's an obvious disadvantage. Make it obvious, like make it wide, make it obvious, make it open, so that mechs can get access. Like shift the focus towards trading and holding positions, not kind of like micromanaging your movement to kind of like get up a bit of pixel. I mean, it's basically all these changes are about adding accessibility to the map. For example, things that feel natural, like on the radio tower area that we were talking about. It's like you have a ramp to get to a place, but it's in the open, like right here, like backwards from when the radio tower in Delta 3 area is.
Oh yeah, right here. Yeah, this is where you have to wiggle up as an assault, and it's a really pain in the ass.
Yeah, you have to go there, and if you want to go up there, you're in the open. The enemy team, like when you poke your head up, everyone can see you, and to add insult to injury, you have to turn your back towards the enemy to go towards cover. Like this is
if you spawn here, you have to go all the way around, because if you go here, you're just gonna die. So, and then guess what? If you go all the way around, you're already gonna get shot in the rear by a light. Because of where spawn. So I feel like spawns are a big thing on here, but just accessibility, you know, and you know, again, I almost feel like too is just from a gameplay, it'd be interesting to see how he feels about, like, should there be positions on the outside? You know, I mean, comp sort of does this down here in this pocket. You can pretty much see and engage a lot of corners. But you know, it's because these are lower, you can't sit down here and engage. You have to be high.
On this, like on this side of the map, this spine area, like the lack of ramps on this area is brutal. Like the reason people don't want to hold here, because there are two places you can hold to kind of like prevent the NASCAR, kind of like shoot the enemy as they come up. But because there's so little accessibility to coming up these ramps, if then an enemy like sends something to flank you here, if you fall down one level, you can't easily get back up. It takes you like 30 seconds. It takes you 30 seconds, 40 seconds to get back up. And by that time, the enemy already came up the ramp and the NASCAR has already started. It's kind of like And also a new player, if he doesn't know and drops into one of these lower valleys, it's done. It's over. Like it's out of the fight for 2 minutes. And imagine a new player trying to find and search for a way to get up. Like, think of how frustrating it is.
Yeah. Well, and like I said, I feel like it'd be interesting to see if these outside parts had more of an impact on potential like gameplay. If there was just a few higher rise play or something like that, to where, because nothing really ever happens over here. This is just an alley, just a movement. It's right. It's like you just use it to move. Maybe you sit up here, but there's nothing dynamic that happens over here. It's always interesting. Like, yeah, I mean, this map requires jump jets, and again, that's sort of the issue is jump jets have more than just scaling stuff, and it gives you the flexibility. You can do it anywhere, whereas with this, it's super penalizing. I mean, again, I think spawns are a big deal, but then just ramps and accessibility to that. But I always hesitate when people say, well, you know, NASCAR, and it's like, well, when did NASCAR really become, like, when did that term really start being used? Because, like, something happened outside of this, which this is great. It's great to hear that. This doesn't change the fact of player behavior I would say player behavior is the number one driving force of NASCAR. Secondary is map design, and then spawn locations and stuff. But like map design, spawn location, I sort of toss that in one thing. And then like I think number two, actually, even before spawn locations and map design, I would toss out balance. Things have shifted. Actually, I would say balance is number one. The reason people started NASCARing was because of changes in the game, as far as the lack of maneuverability or speed that assaults and heavies, and you know what? Does that make sense? Like, that happened first, and then everybody just the trickling down effect started happening, like the trickling down of changes. So I would say map design is like the third on the list. Second would be player behavior, and then first is the whole reason why you even have the player behavior is because of changes in the game. I mean, does that make sense? Like to everyone out there, or like to you, Navid, is like the reason why. Like, why would you leave an assault behind when you know an assault is so important, right? It's because, is that assault as important anymore? Is it a liability now because it's so, you know, like, why is it a liability now? Is it because it's slower? Oh, it also got nerfed on weapons, or, you know, like,
yeah, I mean,
it's a combination of things, right?
Yeah, I mean, the thing, like, it's kind of like a lot of things, like, lending to this problem. One is that, okay, someone who's playing the game like in a medium mech, or like a fast heavy or a light, when they drop into a match, they're thinking about, oh, I just want to shoot shit. I mean, oh, I just find some enemies and just shoot them. There's no kind of like tactical thinking, and I mean, it's fair. It's a game. Like, people would just like have fun, play a game. Like, they're not like thinking about, okay, so if I hold this corner with an assault mech, we would have a good time. Like, sure, we have to wait for like 1 or 2 minutes to kind of like see their assault lance, but still, it's about patience, like controlling an area rather than just like running after, trying to kind of like hunt something in the field. That's one thing. The other thing is that because the maps and spawns are designed right now in a way that assault mechs need to like cover a long distance before getting into a defensible position or into somewhere that they can fight.
Yeah, sure. And I guess what I was asking is like, or alluding to is, I feel like assaults aren't as scary as they used to be. Like,
no, they're not.
Like, yeah, it's scary to see a dual heavy Gauss something, you know, or a quad LB10 or something, but like, what other, you know, like, do you come around a corner and go, oh shit, you know, like, I don't know, like, it's not as, they can't
mean,
control a lot, and I feel like that's sort of, again, it sort of plays to the whole changes have happened to the game that, I mean, even quirks have, in my opinion, negatively affected balance to where you have, again, a 95-ton assault mech that's 60 tons running around and being able to throw rounds downrange, right? Like, that inherently imbalances stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, like in this game, there are things that limit the firepower of assault mechs. Of course, we have Ghost Heat.
Yeah, he just mentioned Ghost Heat. Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah, it's like everyone, like assault mechs are capped at a level, and of course there's armor deficit. That when you go above 65 tons, the armor gain for bigger mechs starts to decline. It's not as drastic as like from like 20 ton to 60 ton. Yeah. There's a big change, but from 60 ton to 100 ton, the slope of armor gain is much less. But at the same time, the reduction in agility and like overall like movement is very drastic. Like you don't gain armor as much, but you lose speed and agility like pretty significantly. So it's kind of like more punishing even towards big mechs. Yeah. And like
armor like, per surface area. Yeah. That's a huge. Yeah, that's a huge one.
Yeah, it is. And like hopefully rescale would kind of like come into play, hopefully like kind of like mitigate some of that problem, but for now that's kind of like what's the biggest problem here. And then our group, like we were kind of like agreed that if a map has more sight lines, then it's less likely for a NASCAR to happen. It can still happen, but it's less likely, and kind of like it's kind of be more punishing if an enemy team just like tries to NASCAR.
Well, look at like Tourmaline. Tourmaline has great sight lines, but in just general play, you have NASCAR because of pathing, Echo 6, right? These big pillars where the only way to get around them is to go left or right, and generally people go to the right.
But the problem with Torma is that one side has vastly better sight lines than the other. It's like the NASCAR happens because if the two teams want to stay and defend,
one's gonna have high ground, one's gonna have low ground.
Yes. One's is as a disadvantage, and the one team that is at a disadvantage wants to gain advantage. And when the movement starts, it's kind of a momentum. Like it turns into a NASCAR because of that momentum, and because there's no communication usually in solo queue. When someone sees, oh, the bulk of the team is moving that way, so they start moving that way. But it's like okay, no one stops because there's no cohesion or decision, a collective decision that we want to stop now. So everyone continues.
Yeah. So you sent this to him. Do you have other examples, or did you talk other maps outside of Canyon?
They wanted to limit it. They wanted to limit it to one map for now, and we talked about like other maps like Mining Collective, like why it is disadvantageous, kind of like to lay out the foundation of our logic rather than like. For example, if you look at the new map, a map that you haven't seen before or played as much before, you kind of like can come up with the conclusion yourself, like what would be the problem. And you can kind of like.
Did he have? So this was your guys' number one choice. Did he feel like another map was, like? Did he talk about like? Was there another map that was like on top of his list of like, hey, I feel like this really needs a lot of love?
I don't remember. I think Mining Collective came up.
Okay.
As a map that is kind of like one side has cover on their approach towards.
I think the other one. Yeah.
The other side is like the assault mechs, because of the spawn. The assault mechs have to cover basically a kill box. Yeah. If you don't want to cross that open area, you have to kind of like move towards the left of the map and kind of like gamble that the enemy team doesn't have forces there, and then you just like get destroyed. And if you want to cross that open area, it's just a gamble. Like you either die or you reach the platform and kind of like get to fight. And I think he also had a suggestion for that map. He was like, okay, why there are ramps on two opposite side of Theta, but not ramps from the other, like from why there are ramps on north and south when there are none
south,
in west, east and west.
I've brought that up
And
too.
and then like we brought up something that, okay, so in that open area, try to add buildings, hangars, structures that kind of like covers that.
Well, that map also has the problem. It has an elevated center. Again, it's you know, it's like, what do you think is going to happen when you only have access left and right with, if you don't have jump jets? It's like this basically. You have to go this way or you have to go this way because
and it's kind of like it's doubly asymmetric to one side's advantage. Is like the one side that has an open area to cross, it's also open to the enemy team from Theta. It's like Theta side, west and east and west side. East and west side are not symmetric. It's like
I've
one side is closed off.
So bad on that as a solo player, because so what he's talking about is this, guys. I'll push up here, right? I'll be like, okay, I'm doing great. I've got center, guys. Follow me, follow me, follow me. Push to the right. And next thing you know, I have assaults blowing me apart. I move back to the center. They're coming up the ramp. This is, it makes, there's no sense of why, like, we don't have that ability over here to use that tactic at all. And so where do you go? You there's no, it'd be one thing if it was just these containers over on this or these buildings, then you'd have the exact same.
I mean, it is crazy because just looking at it, one side gets to have like long range mechs sitting at their base, kind of like putting fire on Theta.
Yeah, and then you're in a pincer movement. You're getting shot from the one side and then shot from the front, and you have to decide where to go, and there's nowhere to go. Like, you drop down, and guess what? They're still shooting you.
There's all sorts of like disadvantages, asymmetries here. It's like open area on the side that has like sight lines on Theta. If you want to cross that open area in an assault mech, you're basically dead. If you want to stay at the back, like shoot towards Theta from long range, you're open to flanks from like light mechs that will get to you if you do that. And it's a frustrating experience like all along, unless you're like a jumpy medium mechs that can like kind of like jump from one side to the other in one go.
Well, that sort of brings up like the only way to get up here is if you have jump jets. So if you had a ramp on both sides to be able to allow movement up there, and that instead of you as an assault having to go all the way around to the right or all the way you could just go up here, you know, navigate. Same thing with like this location. I also feel like, again, it just forces, it would be interesting if like fights happen in other locations. Did you guys talk to him about game modes and map design, like specifically about, you know, going back to your photos?
Yes. There are some like talks about like Domination Circle that are kind of like really unfair on some of the maps. For example, River City is one of the maps that has the problematic Domination Circle. Then there is like another problem with Crimson Strait and in Conquest mode, because like Island to have.
I understand the reason. I guess my question is like, was it brought up at all of like, you know, Dom on this map it should play different than Conquest on this map, right? And I guess that's what I'm sort of getting at is like, was there any talks about, hey, maybe you're actually gonna have changes on a map based on the game mode, you know, like I guess that's what I was sort of wondering if that got brought up at all.
Oh, so different variation of a map
or even if it's small, I mean, because here's the thing is like, Grim Plexus, where are you gonna put the Dom point that isn't the map isn't designed for Dom. It was just designed, and then here you guys go. Like, and Dom came in afterwards. I guess that's what I'm sort of, you know, questioning here.
I don't think that came up. It was like, but it's a good. I mean, it's a good thing to think about, because there are maps in the game that have like different kind of like, not topology, but different assets on the map. For example, like Crimson, I can think like there's some antennas or
It's all the same. The only map that's different was that when they did Forest Colony and Forest Colony Snow back in the day. That was the only difference. And then we have no maps that have different geometry based on game modes at all. Not once.
No.
And so
yeah.
I guess I'm curious because even if it's just like, how do you make that game mode work if you're not going to change the map itself? Like, you're just plopping it down and saying go, and it's like, well, the same imbalances occur.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of like, I think most of the maps can be tuned for kind of like conquest mode, but for example, something like Domination, like each map, you kind of like have to find like, or choose a point on the map, and then choose the spawns, and kind of like, if you don't want to change the topology, just like accept it and put the circle somewhere like in a small area of the map.
Sure.
Choose the spawn somewhere.
Yeah.
And make it.
I mean,
make it
that could be that's like worst
easy
case
way
scenario.
out.
Yeah, easy way out, but also too is like, it doesn't. I mean, I toss this out there. Even Domination on Polar, obviously it's in the center. You just have to add cover around and like low. Again, it comes down to just what that does is when you have an elevated position and your only way of cover is to basically your left on both sides, guess what's going to happen? You're going to rotate. So like, and if there's no cover around, also too, Dom just sort of forces that, right in. I don't know if the circle needs to be bigger on some maps. Like obviously, even on this map, I mean, I don't know,
yeah, I mean, this is
a small map. This is a small map comparatively to the others as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's a problem with Domination, I think, is that the win condition. It's like, usually when you're playing Domination, like it's rarely about the timer. It's kind of like basically a skirmish mode. Everyone tries to kill the other team. That's usually how it goes. So it's really hard. Like, and if you want to ignore it, on a small map, skirmish and Domination is gonna play the same. So there's no difference. If you put the Domination circle in the center of a map, that mode is not going to be much different from skirmish at all, because that's where the fight was going to happen anyway. So what are we achieving? Like, what's the difference between like these two modes?
Well, what is the idea of
Domination?
Dom anyways? I mean, the whole idea is, okay, assault is, I have my cap point, you have your cap point, opposite ends, and it's this balance of, you need to win the fight, and you also need to pay attention. If you don't win the fight and you're not paying attention, you can be outcapped or whatever. Or that you are winning the fight, but you weren't paying attention. And Dom is just, it basically is, you don't even have to be in a circle too. Like, it's just, it's a mechanic to just force the fight to a certain location, right? Which, okay, I mean, like you just said, it's going to happen. But Polar in particular, when you look at Dom, again, it goes back to, a lot of people haven't seen this, by the way, is when they look at the map and they're like, yeah, there's like no cover. There's plenty of cover and concealment. The problem is when the majority of matches are going on, there's none in the center. Like, there's nothing. It's just a big, wide blank. There's cover everywhere. Now, granted, you could argue that some of the pathing, the trenches could be a little bit deeper, but this is why it's a problem, is because the cap point's like right here, literally right there, and there's no cover around here. And guess what? Highest point. And so you maneuver around left and right. Both teams do it because the only cover you have is physically this mountain to your left. And there's no options for you out here. And like I said, it's weird because when you go up here and you look, oh shit, there's stuff everywhere. why is there such a big blank space? And this is sort of what I was getting at as far as like having a game mode, you know, like Dom, maybe, you know, like, I don't know, maybe, I guess you can technically leave it.
I agree in the sense that not all maps need to have all the modes, because the topology is not designed to allow those. I mean, it's like, okay, so domination, like if you show that domination mode to someone who has never played MechWarrior, he or she will go like, is it like King of the Hill or something? And it's supposed to be, but it wouldn't play like King of the Hill in like usual FPS games that you know.
Yeah.
But and I think part of the problem is that they wanted to like put all the modes on every map, and I don't think it's gonna work.
Well, you can make it work. You just have to put in the work. That you can make the game modes work. It's just we never got any additional changes to the maps to make the game mode fit proper. So, for instance, like even if you had Dom here, the reason why you know, like you can't sit here is because there's no cover. Like if there was some cover, buildings, big rocks or whatever, you could actually set up like counter push. Like you could have a defendable position as well. But also, you can't physically see past this center hill. So it literally promotes, in this case, rotation. Because you know, if you're sitting right here and they push around the corner, you're fucked. Right? And so you're going to want to rotate, but you can't engage. So you physically, to find that shot, again, it goes back to, I don't know.
Yeah.
This isn't me jabbing at the map designers. I don't know the person. I'm sure they had good intent. But every single one of the maps except Rublight, and we know Rublight was done by John, every other map has this weird central location and oddities, if you will, about the map design. And, you know, when it comes to, you plop Dom down there, well, guess what's going to happen? You're going to have rotation because there's no cover concealment. You can't engage the enemy forces at any type of range unless you, again, are sitting over here, which, again, then you're not in the zone and you're also vulnerable to the push and, you know, stuff like that. So,
yeah, I mean, on polar domination, like personally, if I was going to change anything on that, I would put a big central command base in the center, and with walls and ramps and doors everywhere from each side, like more than 10 ramps and doors, giving you access to that like command base, and kind of like an area that has cover inside, and kind of like it's not like in the open. Like, why are we like trying to mash our faces together around a satellite dish? Like, what's the point of this mode? It's like everyone goes to the circle and then like run around the satellite dish. It's not good gameplay. I would 100% agree with that. It's like putting a major structure, like change, like I think they can put assets in the game depending on the game mode. They do it for other modes. For example, on Crimson, I know that there are buildings, antennas, extra stuff that are not part of the objectives that are in the map. So Incursion, it has walls. Of course, there are other. They can put different assets based on the game mode. I think for domination, I think they chose like the easy way out.
Oh, it was 100% the easy, and I'm not saying that's. Yeah. It's the same thing when it goes back to like bolt-ons. That's the easy way to do it, but it doesn't mean in the long run. I mean, my main issues is, you know, like how predictable like this map is. HPG, like I'm sick and tired of HPG. I don't even enjoy it. I think HPG is probably one of the worst. You know. Yeah,
I think that's gonna be one of our other suggestions to the map designer for the next few months. Like we're thinking about stuff that makes that map better. Basically, like the adding new platforms and levels and stuff to that.
Verticality.
Yeah, verticality.
Yeah. And options too, because like again, this map right here is it's worse than Canyon. I mean, it's literally and I'm saying this like it's again elevated central location. Now, granted, you can come in from multiple different angles. But like if you're, again, this comes down to spawns, like you only have limited amount of options as far as like the fight underneath. We used to have this issue with Terra Firma where we said, hey, if you just had like, instead of 4 entries, if you had like 6, like if there was a side entrance here as well, that definitely complicates things. But it's this elevated thing. You cannot physically, okay, so if you're coming in here, you cannot set up a position to snipe. And how I look at maps, guys, is there should be multiple avenues. And this is why I use Rubelite so much. Rubelite allows you to use range, but it also allows your enemies to be able to reposition. And if you don't counter that, you know, again, you have no options here. You have none. And you go to the right, this is no man's land. This is by far, I think, one of the worst design from a gameplay standpoint. You physically can't do anything. And right now, the big issue is if you spawn by yourself in an assault mech in these left spawns, you're literally screwed unless your team stops, which is very rare. And then, or I'd also argue it still sucks if you're right here as an assault, because guess what? You maneuver out and you're trying to get over to this side because guess what? Natural rotation because of, again, elevated point. There's spawns, NASCAR happening. Your left side's vulnerable because, again, there's just not an option for you. You say, well, hold the ground. I mean, you're just going to get overrun. There's no options to have counterplay here. This whole, I would love to see that entire thing redone because you like have the spire in the middle, but these multiple like levels, you need to be able to engage someone from over here. Now, dude, it may be a go ahead.
Well, one of the like mock-ups, like just small mock-ups that we kind of like prepared, we didn't know that they were gonna do like one map at a time, was HPG basically, and what we had in mind was to hollow out underside on that like main platform, allowing mechs to kind of like shoot from one side.
Yeah, you're saying right here, like this would just be yeah, I mean, I guess, but you still can't do that from over here. Like if there was like platforms here where you could actually get up, and granted, you're vulnerable if someone pushes you, but it gives you options and stuff.
Yeah,
let's see here. Yeah, I get what you're saying, but I still think it's a problem though, because it doesn't, this whole, like, I think elevation needs to be lowered.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's kind of like we're kind of like counting on. Okay, so if they don't want to change the model, like ideally, I would say if you kind of like lower that platform to be on the same level, like with the rest of the middle platform, basically, like push everything down. Like you don't need those ramps.
Sure.
That go to the upper one. Like
sure, but
like make it all into one giant.
And that's
like
fine. Where you could have fights here and also on top. But the problem here is it doesn't solve the rotation thing to the right, because again, you can't set up here. Like this is no man's land, and so even if you're sitting on top of this, you can't fire effectively at something that's right here. Like you wouldn't be able to shoot anything. So again, you have to have verticality here. Like there needs to be, like, these little ramps things are great, but they're absolutely useless. Like if they were bigger, like if they were legitimately like high here and it gives you options. And again, your sight lines may only be here and to cover this area, which would be great. And if someone pushed you, you're vulnerable and you have to move, and you know, like it's just the same. I just feel like this map, like every single time we get it, I'm so ultimately bored with it. Like it's just,
I mean,
it's the
main problem,
same thing over and over.
The main problem with this map is the kind of like super elevated central area. It's like the
person that made this made Caustic and made Canyon. I mean, like I said, it has this is Caustic Valley, just bigger. I mean, Caustic Valley has the exact same issues. You know, like what happens if you lower that caldera down, and you allow some sight lines to happen? And albeit you want to control the sight lines, right?
Yeah.
But Am I crazy, chat? Like,
no, I mean it's kind of like it's I don't know.
Like I like the theme
even
of this map, but it's just it's I'm just over like this in particular. Someone asked me a few days ago what I thought the worst maps were, and I said I don't think Polar's the worst map. No, I don't want just more maps, dude. Look, I'm 100% with Darren, and I felt this way, and I'm so glad he actually like spoke up about it. That's one of the problems PGI has had. That's one of the problems, and I do not want them to continue down that road. And the problem is they will come out with something and they never update it. There's no iterative work. That's been one of the biggest pet peeves I've had, even when I worked for them, is they'll come up with a map and they will not go back to fix it. And you heard Russ, like I get it from a business perspective sometimes. They can, you know, a new map sells. But guess what? We have a shit ton of maps, but how many of them just haven't gotten any love? And they're a good theme. They just need a little bit of attention. And hell, what about a bridge, dude? What about long bridges that like span here? And like, again, the verticality to this map and adjustment and counterplay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, going back to the map thing, guys, just chat. My biggest issue with PGI, my biggest pet peeve has always been something will come out and it doesn't get iterated on. You know, or like Domination. They moved around a few of the points on Crimson Strait and Grim because they physically, they had to. They were out of balance, out of whack. But like, we didn't get any adjustments to the maps. We didn't get any adjustments to the game mode of how it works. It's just, here's the map. And to me, I don't think it's a lot to ask. Yeah, new maps are great. But fix, like we're still gonna have all these maps that you play every single day. Like even if they come out with a one map, 2 maps a year, guess what? That's only 2 more options. You're gonna have all the other maps that have issues, and why not make those work and better?
Yeah, I mean that has been like the problem, I would say, with a lot of the features in MW so up to this point. But it's like, okay, just trying to, some maps like HPG, the problems are so fundamental that it's like trying to kind of like redesign the map from scratch. For example, like there are open areas like in one side of the map, like for one team there's like open ground in the open, and the enemy team can just come up the platform on even if they NASCAR, they're going to catch you in the open.
This is where, so we have a new level designer that's working for PGI, Francois, right? Super nice guy, it seems. That's what you guys basically said.
Yep.
I think I'd like to just sort of see what his suggestions would be. Like, outside of any influence from myself, from anybody else, of just saying like, because he may come along and say, yeah, and that's maybe, I think you sort of said you were surprised that he already knew the issues when you were talking about Canyon and stuff, is like, hey, there's no, like, that's what I'm saying is like, I think community feedback is great, but I also feel like it would be like just hearing and seeing what he does. Like if he, what are your suggestions for this map? I mean, he's playing all the time, obviously, so I think he's getting a better understanding of the maps and the inadequacies of the maps, or the you know, from the design perspective. Because from a design perspective, I'm not a map level designer, but I'm assuming it's pathing has a lot to do with it. I'm sure pathing is a thing when it comes to sight lines are probably a big thing. Locations where you're coming into the maps and stuff. So that you've got 3 things right there that are pretty important, right? Which is spawns, pathing, and then sight lines. Let alone, you know, outside of that, again, I'm sort of speaking out of my wheelhouse here, but I that's why when anybody talks about new maps, that's awesome. I think they should do that. I think they you know, Francois should work with the community, come up with a really cool design. But for me, I'm like, but we have so many maps that, like Crimson Strait, like just needs a little bit of love, right? Needs some, you know, and makes it a whole new another experience. Like, you know,
it's like for HPG, I mean, depending on how deep they want to modify this map, because I honestly think this map has a fundamental problem. You see, let's even go by lore. HPG, I mean, we have this like gigantic dish in the middle with this platform. We have 4 corners on this map inside the walls. Just like make this dish a little bit smaller, make it 4, put it on smaller platforms around the map, open up the center, like just get rid of that huge platform, kind of like that block in the center, like open it up, and then have those kind of like 4 smaller dishes, like pointing at different look, I mean, directions in space, and then one of your biggest problems would go away, and that's going to be like the centralized, like high-rise platform that kind of like encourages the NASCAR, because you want to get to the enemy. That thing is in the way, so naturally you go around it if the top side is risky. So that's plain and simple. I mean, and those kind of like there are lots of maps in the game that have this. I would just remove the entire central part, like perhaps like have the basement but kind of with an open top, and then like with an open top, and then like some little like bits and pieces that define the area that was the basement basically, and then have these smaller dishes like in the 4 corners of the map inside, and then suddenly you have sight lines from one side of the map to the other side, but you don't have the central platform to kind of like create that NASCAR movement for you.
Well, it's not a very big map where the engagement happens, and some of that has to do is because these huge walls, we know what mechs can get up there, but like because of, again, the lack of, like, I can't sit here and set up and try to engage when they're on the other side, like again, because of the height of this terrain, and there's the lack of just verticality here. Anyways, I would be interested to see what he would do.
Yeah. And also, one more thing. Get rid of these damn little pieces of little columns on the ground. It's like, just okay, so we understand.
I've never understood I've never understood the texture and the greebles on here. I think it looks so ugly.
Yeah, it does.
It looks so bad. It's been one of my biggest, like,
it's the generic
metal, texture, Borg, like what is, I never understood, or these like I've never understood this map. To me, if they would have just kept like solid texture work and like flat, I've never understood this.
It's the generic 80s movies type of textures that you put in on space.
It's a default metal texture in CryEngine. Like I said, to me, I think aesthetically a lot of maps are not very good.
There's nothing wrong with having like modernized slabs of wall, modernized slabs of kind of like.
But how much does this add to any? I mean, the hitboxes it's gotta.
Nothing.
I don't know.
It's absolutely the game. Yeah.
I don't know.
It's extra weird. Geometry. It's extra geometry that is not needed. And also these little pillars, like get rid of them. They're so frustrating. It's like they serve no purpose. I mean, I don't know, like.
Well, they're to block you, and you got to pay attention where you're going. I mean, you know, like.
Yeah. It is frustrating because like when you're fighting, like you don't go forward always. Like you want to go backward as well, and I don't know, like. It is.
Well, like I said, I think
frustrating.
It would be interesting. I think this is one of the worst maps out there, and that's why when someone asked me, I said I just don't enjoy it anymore, like this, you know, at all. So
I mean, we like this map is one of those that's kind of like have to have an extensive talk, not just one simple change. It's like we stopped this, like we were just like coming up with ideas. We stopped this when they said that we're gonna we said that we're going to start with Canyon. But again, HPG I think is one of the most problematic maps. The other one, Crimson Strait, came up that were like, okay, so why this map is so asymmetric? Like, why are we not using like 25% of the square that we can use.
Yep.
I mean, it's kind of like 25% of that square is just nothing.
Yeah, but I think somewhat of it comes down to, and this is the maybe cynical side of things, where again, whoever was making the maps did not play the game, and did not play the game to the passion and level that I feel like. I think it was just a job, you know, and they just,
yeah, I think so.
They did it, and unfortunately, and look, you don't have to be a very good player to really like see like the
See
faults,
the problems.
see the problems. Like, and from level design, I just feel like that's what it is. It's just, it was just a job. They're just doing it, and it has obviously huge gameplay implications. You know, when you know you've got stuff, and I like the idea of asymmetrical, but I mean, again, my biggest issue, and I've said this over, is just the lack of they'll come out with something and that doesn't get iterated on for the most part. I mean, Incursion sort of got iterated, but it was never supposed to be it was supposed to be attack and defend. It was never supposed to be. Basically all they did is they created the assault game mode, but with bigger stuff. I mean, which we never liked. We didn't want the base to have turrets because it destroys a ability for it's just one of those things where,
yeah, honestly, when they showed the Incursion mode, I thought, okay, cool, like there's a base defense mode, and one team is gonna attack.
Hey dude, imagine working for them, the patch hits, you play, and while you're live you're finding out that it's not asymmetrical, and you have no idea what's going on. Imagine, put yourself in that. That's basically what happened to me. I had no idea. No one told me. No one said, hey, just FYI, like, play this down. I mean, nothing. Just, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, look at, if you even look at a game right now, it's one of the most unpopular game modes in the game right now. It's like, and there's good reason for that. I mean, it's just.
I think it's a respawn game mode type of game mode, like that. The idea, but even then, I think it looks horrible. I think it looks tacked on. Like it's the easy way to do things instead of having a dedicated map to Incursion, and it looks good, and it, you know, stuff like that.
Reactor online.
You know, so anyways, I'm optimistic having him on board, and you know, and it's good to hear that, you know, you feel pretty good about the conversation you had with him.
Yeah, I mean, and we were like 8 people sitting there like talking, and I'm pretty sure like all of us were like, okay, so now this is positive, we're going somewhere now.
Yeah, we're dropping this map.
Yes.
Well, it's funny, we actually have more than 4 entrances. We have 6 now, but again, spawn locations. And so like, this is what I'm saying is, like, even if you wanted to try to take shots at the other, like, you can't physically set up here.
Nothing.
There's nowhere. So this forces you to move forward.
Top guys.
Okay. So that's where we're going. But as you can see here, they're already pushing. So if you're an assault, and sometimes that happens, you get spawned there. By the time I get to this top of this ramp, they're already going to be shooting this way already.
I've seen so many assault mechs just die with 0 damage. They can't do anything, and it's not their fault. They just.
But also, too, this goes back to what I was saying earlier: is the game has changed. Take top guys, force it. The game has changed. We didn't. The Jenner used to be the epitome of death and destruction, right? Like back in the day. It's not the case anymore. You know, like.
Yep.
Fox, right torso. Sorry, I'm just trying not to die.
Yeah.
Engaged.
They did take that.
Linebacker city.
Engaged.
Yeah, Jenner used to be the top, you know. Do you choose DPS, or do you sustainability or alpha? That's what it used to be. But my point being is, now you have a flea that has more fire or Jenner 7F firepower, but the size of what it is, the speed of 150 plus kph. You see what I'm saying? Like that's when I say the game has, it's fundamentally changed. We just don't have the same, you know, and that's why like a few matches ago, a poor assault or a light mech just rushed a poor assault, and there was nothing he could do. And like literally, like regardless of spawn location or map design, he was just, you know, screwed.
Engaged.
Sorry, I'm having. Let's counter, guys. They're just gonna be right on top of us.
What?
Yeah, assaults have to slow.
Yeah, I mean the dynamics have changed. Like there's so many mechs now in the game that can pack the same level of firepower that usually assault mechs could do. And yeah, I mean, and I think maps should have been adapted and updated based on the state of the game.
Sure, yeah, 100%. But again, when they're built without solid foundations, I think it just sort of it's highlighted.
Yeah.
And in this case, I think that's basically what we ended up with is.
Yeah, I think many know that. I think you can assume that maps in Mechwarrior Online were designed based on aesthetics and visuals rather than.
Yeah, which is funny
gameplay.
because to me, this aesthetic does not look nice.
Yes.
Right? Same thing with like Rubelite. It's the same metal texture, and I've never been a fan of it. It's just, to me,
Brown everywhere.
Down.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully, this new map designer Francois can kind of like breathe a little bit of fresh air into.
Yeah, I think it'll be good. You know,
Yeah.
you know, it'd be obviously it'd be great to have stuff like now, but you know,
Yeah.
things take time and it doesn't happen instantly. It's not like that's impossible. So,
We're detecting no more hostiles.
Yeah,
Good job, soldiers.
but
yeah, we'll have to see what.
I guess on this map, I guess what it comes down to is it's so predictable. It's so predictable. Like when I drop on Rubelite, am I gonna be F6 high, low, or are we gonna be on the other side, high, low, or is it just gonna be they're gonna be up on the ridges, some of them sniping? You know, like that's one of the things is like I don't want to know. When I get this damn map, I know exactly what's going to happen, and that's not fun. And so, like, unpredictability. I want the battle to take place in different spots. Also, too, is like, from a map design perspective, how do you make that, right? How do you shift? And again, I don't have the answer necessarily. I'm just questioning here. You know, so...
Yeah, I think your map having, like, just looking at the stark differences between Rubelite and this map. This map has a gigantic central structure that blocks sightlines from one side of the map to the other side. Rubelite is the exact opposite.
Yeah.
The center is open. Like, you have sightlines for days from like each side of the map to the other, which kind of like shows. The multi-level aspect is distributed around the map, not the center.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like Rubelite does everything that HPG does wrong, but in a right way. It's like it has multi-level because HPG. Okay, so people will say, okay, HPG has multi-level gameplay. Rubelite has it too, but why it's so good on Rubelite, and why it's so horrible on HPG? Because another problem for HPG is that usually, in order to get away from death, you need to jump down, go to the basement, and when you go there, you're basically out of the fight. Your team is gonna get it, and it's so bad. I mean, I can't like emphasize.
Well, here's a good example. Like you're talking about, it's got elevated, and so like you could sit up here and snipe But here's the thing. If they push you, you're not going to be able to see their movement until maybe they pop up here. And this is a really good design map. And for those, it doesn't have an elevated central area either. Just to point that out there, it's got a maneuverability all around. And so it allows dynamic play. I will say, of course, that means the primarily the area of play is going to be in this area. It's not going to be on the fringes here, and you don't really ever see the fringes being used out here. And you could say that's fine. You know, I feel like some of this would get used if it was like respawn, if you had multiple ability, because then you could put out a little cap point here for like a radar depth or a radar sensor tower or something, and people could fight over it and stuff like that. But this map right here, in my opinion, is the best designed map in the game. Like, hands down.
I agree.
And it was done with the foundations, I think, of just level design and also understanding how gameplay works with, you know, mechs. But, you know, so, again, this is why every single time it gets brought up, I say verticality. Well, what does verticality means? It means low positions, it means medium positions, higher positions, but it's not just in like one location. It's also not in the center. It allows play to happen. Like, you'll have people that'll sit here and snipe. I mean, you'll have people that sit on these ramps and snipe and engage, but also it allows you to be able to counter. I can hop down here, I can maneuver, next thing you know, I'm right on top of my opponents. Right? You don't have this ability on all the other maps for the most part.
Nope.
You just don't.
I mean, that's kind of like what's unique about Drubalite. It's like you have the two main castles, basically. You have like towers to defend. You have like shelves at the end. Other map, it's balanced basically. And the sightline, you can brawl because the topology of the map, the multi-level aspect of it, allows brawlers to get close without being seen. And there are multiple ways to get close. You can't anticipate the path. You can just sit there and like look at the tunnel for the brawlers to come in. There are multiple ways. And there's just like so many things that are right in this map. And I think they need to go back and kind of like take hints from what makes a map good. And then,
well, I think the new guy already has it. Whereas it was before, unfortunately, John doesn't work there anymore, and so that's why you know. So it's just one of those things where, you know, the best map. Now I say, not aesthetics. Again, I'm not a fan of this texture. I think it looks so bad. It looks like something from like the early 2000s. It's just like the texture work is just But from a gameplay perspective, this is definitely the best. It's something metal. I don't even know it. Yeah. So, what other questions? Did you guys talk about game modes at all? That's probably not his department, I guess. That would be...
Yeah, we haven't. Like, we talked about, like, changing locations for, like, Domination in the meantime.
So what are your thoughts on spawn location? Should everybody be dropped in the same location? Does it need to be split up again? Or, like...
I think, like, again, just, like, mention it. Like, we talked about mining the spawn location to put them at the either end of the map. Like, put everyone in the same place. So there's no problem with kind of like someone having to cross an open area. That's for mining. They said that they already have a fix for Tourmaline in store for the patch. Yeah. And then the other one was a fix to spawn locations for HPG in the as the first step, so that there's the two lances that spawn, like as you said, in the open. Not being able to do anything.
Was there any suggestions for Canyon?
Canyon, yes, there was. It was like, okay, so perhaps like spawn people at either side of the map, like the south and north, and like see what happens. But they were like, okay, we kind of like have 3 spawn locations fixes for next patch. This one is not going to be in April. I think this one's going to be May, like Canyon. But yeah, we talks for spawn locations for Canyon came up, but at the end, like there was no definite decisions. I think HPG, Torma, and mining would be for April, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. This map also struggles with verticality as well, and being able to like have, you know, a position where you have sight lines, but then you can't necessarily see being moved up on, or, you know, it's not the best. You have to, anyways, there's a lot of and I'm not saying every map has to be basically Rubelite, but, you know, I think you can take aspects that work really well, and, well, how would that work on a map like this, or should it just be completely different? I always wonder what it would be like to have like tunnels right here, like on some of these where, you know, you could, you know what I'm saying? Like, I know we have these overhangs and bridges, but that would always be interesting, is like, what if there was,
Yeah, I mean, I think Darren was saying that Francois is like kind of like is familiar with CryEngine, but it's kind of like as he gets more
oh yeah, he's
experienced
probably learning.
experienced with this
And whatever
perhaps,
tools, tools that they have.
Yeah, perhaps he would be able to do like some like really good things to some of the maps.
We mentioned last time it'd be cool to see a canyon, or not a canyon, a cave map, but one thing that would have to be solved is arty. You can't do arty or airstrikes. That would be, I mean, it'd have to be a big fucking cave to be able to do arty in, but it's definitely, I don't see a problem in that, you know.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine.
Did you ever play Living Legends, the cave map that they had?
No, but I watched like a lot of videos for Living Legends.
It's huge. It's a big map. I mean, so you could pop UAV. It's huge. Like, it's super tall. Like, and you know, but